Good evening, everybody, and welcome to On the Sports Lines for April 30th, 2020. This is our fifth show in quarantine, and on the heels of the NFL draft this week, we will recap the Jets and the Giants draft, and we'll tell you who had the best and worst virtual hauls from this past weekend. And no, the answer is not Roger Goodell in his $1 million living room where he was making those picks last weekend. And no. We will also talk about Jameis Winston's upgrade in the NFC South, but downgrade in role, and the topic that no one has talked about on the internet and sports shows, Michael Jordan and The Last Dance. It's not been a topic. We're going to be the first one. We're going to be the first ones to talk about it. No one has ever talked about MJ's greatness until this show right now. With me up above, once again, is Jay Kaplan. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rabbi.
And below me is a man who has been with us before when we had an actual studio in an actual place that wasn't actually in quarantine. He is the creator of the Good Shepherd YouTube page. Please subscribe. He's done 8 pieces. The 8th just got put up today. Good evening, Mr. David Shepard.
Oh, thank you for the generous plug, Rabbi. How are you?
Good, and I'm kind of curious on how you grabbed the Good Shepherd as a screen name to begin with. I'm shocked it wasn't taken. Congrats on that, sir.
Thank you.
Nice piece of branding there, Jeff.
Thank you. Obviously we know the movie with Matt Damon, and I think it would be more accommodating than the Bad Shepherd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think it's Rabbi, it's been very exciting so far, just being able to do that. So thanks for mentioning that.
And we wanted to say shout out to everybody who watched last week's NFL Draft show, whether it be live or next day, and to everybody on the Sports Lines crew who has been with us throughout when we've been in the studio. And let's get started tonight with a draft recap, starting with the locals and Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants, who really rebuilt their offensive line. 3 out of their first 5 picks were O-linemen and had some universally liked picks in between. Let's give out some grades. Jay, let's start with you.
You know, it's funny, my initial, visceral reaction was somewhere in the B area. But, the more I dive into the later picks in the draft, once you get past Andrew Thomas and once you get past Xavier McKinney, I started to like it more and more in terms of guys that, while they may not necessarily jump out at you as, yes, there's this many, they could all potentially start. They fill needs, they fill depth. We talked about it when the pick was actually made at number 4 on draft night, Rabbi. We all liked Andrew Thomas, the tackle out of Georgia, as that pick. I didn't expect him to be grabbed that high, but I had no problem with this pick whatsoever. I think whether he starts at right tackle and eventually moves to left or starts straight up at left because they're tired of Solder, I think this guy's going to be starting tackle for them for the next 10 years. I think McKinney in the second round out of Alabama is a steal. They need somebody out there who they really haven't – they've been missing – what Landon Collins gave them, in the back 4, and I think the kid has the potential to be that. Matt Kurt's an interesting pick, the offensive tackle out of UConn. He is a bit of a project, but you know what? They can afford to develop this guy. He has road grader potential, so we'll see what happens. I like Darnay Holmes out of UCLA, potential slot corner there. Shane Lemieux is a inside, he's an interior offensive lineman who has potential. And even the rest of these guys, Cam Brown out of Penn State, and their 7th round picks, all bring something to the table that could, at bare minimum, fill in depth in places where the Giants were lacking. So, if you're looking for me to lay it down and put an overall grade, B plus to A minus. I think Gettleman did. This is finally the draft, the type of draft we've been hoping he would have since he took over and had not up until this point.
Dave?
Yeah, no, Jay, that's very in-depth. The thing I would echo what Jay said is Andrew Thomas is maybe the most regarded offensive tackle coming into this season as a rookie. And the problem we know with Eli wasn't Eli. The problem with Eli is what they had around him. And when you go 12-36, you got to really self-reflect and say, what is it that we're missing as a franchise? And what they're missing as a franchise in the past 3 seasons when you go 12-36 is you're missing protection. Because I got to tell you, Eli was better than Brad Johnson. He was better than Trent Dilfer when those guys were game managers. And so you're not putting the right pieces around him. And ultimately, if you surmise it, it led to his early retirement, in my opinion. And Eli took a hit. A lot of people said he was done. A lot of people put a fork in him. But the reality was it was more so the protection or lack thereof around him than anything else. The reason I'm going to give them a B-, Rabbi and Jay I thought you were very generous, is because the Giants, you know what? They've the bed for 3 years. I can't quite go there and give them such a good grade because we got to see what unfolds. We got to see what happens with Daniel Jones. But I like the fact that they're thinking along the lines of protection.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only thing that they didn't truly address is pass rushing. They got guys who conceivably could have potential, but they didn't draft somebody who, when you look at him and go, yeah, there's your edge guy, maybe not this year, but maybe a year or two from now. And
Yeah.
I don't see any of that. None of that jumps off the bat at me. Carter Kaplan out of Minnesota has potential, but it's not there for me just yet.
No one in that group has potential, Jay, and they didn't get anyone until round 6, and I understand you needed let's start with the fact that I'm going to give him a B+. I'm giving him the same grade that you are because I really like the Thomas pick. I think offensive line was the biggest need position for them. I would have liked to see them get Simmons because they couldn't trade down, but it seems like no one could really trade down in this draft. And I know Dave Gettleman has an idea. If I want to get somebody, I'm going to use my pick on them, whether I can get them at 4 or whether I can get them at 8. If he trades down, he's trading down because he's getting a huge haul. But no one got a huge haul. I love the Matt Hurt pickup because at UConn he was one of the top 10 efficiency rated offensive linemen in FBS, which is outstanding, especially for UConn. And if he bulks up, he's a mainstay on that line for 10 years. I think the McKinney pick is huge. It's one of the only times I've ever seen the Giants basically say, you know what? This guy is here at number 36. I want to go with the best person on the board. You had to. Not a lot of teams do that. I don't think Gettleman thought he had a shot with him at 36, but they got him at 36. I said last week they should get Grant Delpit because I thought that's likely who they should get who would be there at 36, but they had their choice of many safeties, so why not get the best one? And the only reason I'm not going to A- is because I think the Giants are still lacking in skill position players. I know at running back they're set with Saquon, but they really don't have a real backup. I know they got Dion Lewis in the offseason to back him up. That's not going to do any good if Barkley's hurt.
Gallman's going to be back, and I think under this coaching staff, I think he will be better utilized than he was under Shermer's. And, I think that had a lot to do with the fact that he was not as efficient or as, what they expected out of him as Saquon's backup. And I think it was I don't think he was used as well as he could be. And I think Jason Garrett's offense will help him with that.
Oh, God, you just said Jason Garrett's offense. I'm getting headaches.
You got to start getting used to saying it, partner.
Headaches hearing it already. Oh, my God. But, again, they also needed wide receivers, I think. Yeah, I know. I'm accepting it. But I still get headaches over it. They needed wide receivers, though, and I would have liked to see them pick up one wide receiver in what was probably one of the most loaded wide receiver drafts ever.
Maybe, but you know what? The top end of that room is pretty solid as long as everyone's healthy. And they've got a lot of guys that they had as depth players last year who got reps because of injuries are coming back. So it may not be a tier 1 type room, but I think there's guys in there outside of Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, and Darius Slayton, who nobody expected him to be what he was as a rookie.
No, but
it'll be interesting to see what that next level of guys with a year under their belt, if they step up.
Yeah, but especially in a year which is make or break for Gettleman, I would think he would want at least one assurance of having another wide receiver in depth. So again, that's why it's a B+, not an A-. Let's move on to the Jets. Let's paint MetLife green and talk about their draft. They started out with offensive lineman Mekhi Becton, a move that everybody except for myself, which we'll get to in a minute, hated the guts out of live. But the Jets actually pulled the Patriots this year. They traded down twice in this draft and filled a ton of positions. Jay, grade them.
As of right now, I'm giving them a C+ with room to get that up to a B-B. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Jets had a bad draft. The Jets just had they had the draft that I don't think a lot of us expected them to have coming in. Becton, to me, it seemed to me that was the shocking pick. More so because of the off the field dings against him. And as I said on draft night, guys, he must have interviewed really well with Douglas for Douglas to say, okay, all of the stuff that I read about you, I feel better after talking to you that your head is in the right place to go along. There's no doubt that Becton has the talent. There is no doubt about that at all. The kid is going to be a starting tackle in this league. I was just shocked by the fact that of all the guys they could have taken at that slot, they took him. I said they needed to take a receiver. They went with Mims out of Baylor in this second round.
Yep.
The kid has potential. There's no doubt. They needed to get guys to play with Darnold. He's got length. He's got speed. He could develop into a wide receiver one. He needs to gain consistency and have that catch up to his high. He's got, look, in terms of physical ability, he's at the upper tier, but his consistency, route running, his ability to play the game up here as well as with his feet and his hands needs to improve. Ashton Davis, the safety out of California, is interesting. Jabari Zuniga's got potential as an edge rusher out of UF. Perrine is interesting. They needed to get a running back because, like everybody else, I think they've seen that Le'Veon Bell is not going to be the Pittsburgh Le'Veon Bell. But, James Morgan as a quarterback out of Florida International, I don't get that pick whatsoever. I got to tell you, though, to me, the diamond in the rough, if he gets healthy, to me is Bryce Hall out of Virginia. He's a guy whose stock dropped in the draft due to his injury, so obviously he couldn't really have a pro day. He couldn't really work out for guys. Based off not his last season, but his previous season, if he repeated that, he probably would have gone higher. So is there a potential for that to be a steal in the 5th round? Yeah, but again, there's a lot of potential, but I don't see anything that is kind of locked in the way there are certain things we saw that, there's locked in stuff with the Giants draft. So hence the lower grade.
Dave, come on, let's get this up here. Let's go to the B range.
Sure. Well, let me ask you guys a question because I was thinking about this. And when you read it, if you guys, and I'm throwing a little bit of a wrench in this, but if you had to give Darnold a grade from first year to second year, what would you give him?
Incomplete because of what happened with the mono. That's the tough part. But I would have to say towards the whole year, I'd give him a C+.
Okay.
And that's being nice.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, incomplete, and that's what I said on the show when we were talking about it, because you haven't. I mean, everybody talked about, the kid's got to make the jump from his first year to his second year. That's where franchise quarterbacks make that jump. But as we talked about on the show, if you think about it, Shep, starting from his last 2 years at USC through his first 2 years in the NFL, he's played in 4 different offenses. So the question is that every time you have to learn a new offense under a new coach with different players around you, and you're asked to do different things within the scope of that offense, it is a reset and you are starting back at 1. So do I think he has the talent to be, if not like a first ballot Hall of Famer, at least one in the top 15 of quarterbacks? I'm not ready to give him top 10, but I think he has the potential to be a top 15 guy, a guy who can put you on his back and win games for you. But it's a question of getting comfortable in an offense that is going to be the same the year, in back-to-back years. So I'm anxious to see what he can do this year. But,
Right.
to me, he's incomplete until we see that.
It's interesting because the reason I bring it up and the reason why it relates to the draft is because when you get a guy like Mekhi, that's a Sam Darnold pick. It's saying we have to do everything we can in that famous third year to get him over that hump. And if not, there's going to be whispers about Trevor Lawrence if the Jets were to really fade the season. I mean, let's be honest. I like the Thomas because I think he's a little underrated coming in. But I like, again, that they're taking a playbook. I'm not saying they're taking a playbook out of the Giants because I would take a playbook out of the Little Giants, the movie, before I take a playbook out of the Real Giants. But look, I like what they're doing in that Mekhi pick. It's all about protecting Sam Darnold. I don't think he's going to see ghosts at this point. But I got to tell you something. I like what I saw out of him last year. And I went back and I was really looking at it. He significantly improved. And he did it under a guy who he's never played for before. I mean, when you look at his record, what was he, 7-6?
Yeah.
So, all right. So here's the thing. I'm going to give the Jets a B+ Rabbi, because they're better than people think. Darnold had a better year than people think. I want to say he was almost at a 2-touchdown and 1 interception ratio. So really, if we want to grade the draft class, to me, it's about looking at Thomas and looking about Mekhi and the pieces around him. But because they're going to be an addition to a guy that I believe is a superstar in the making, you got to give this draft class a B.
And
I mean,
I went B as well. Here's why. I love the first 3 picks. I don't think any team had a better first 2 days of the draft. I think Becton is a stud. I would have loved to see them pick Wirfs here, but Becton is a stud. I think when Wirfs dropped, I think Wirfs he can start from day one. I think Becton can probably do a lot of things, but I think he might need a year or two. So this is not, as Anthony Strait said that last week, the Kyle Brady pick of 2020. But and there are personal problems, obviously, that are going to have to be addressed. Right pick 11. I think Mims at what ended up being, I believe, 59 is the best trade of this draft. Read it perfectly. The Jets needed players, and they got more players and got the guy who I think they would have taken even at like 40 or at 48, their pick. And then I love the Ashton Davis pick to start day 3 at safety. I think, or actually that was day 2. I'm sorry. I love Ashton Davis. I think he will be a huge part of this team going forward, and I think he can start from day 1. However,
well, I mean, bare minimum, Rabbi, you got yourself your kick returner.
Bare minimum, you got yourself a kick returner, and if Jamal Adams holds out, you have somebody who can probably fill in easily. However, LaMichael Perrine is not a good pick at all. I don't think he should have been taken that high. I don't think Zuniga should have been taken that high. And I do not understand with Jake Fromm on the board why you're taking James Morgan out of Florida International.
Right?
I don't understand it at all, because I think you want to make sure Darnold has a capable backup, or at least a capable backup to the backup, so you don't have Luke Falk starting games again in 2020. But James Morgan is such a project. He's not starting for you, and he's got this huge arm, but I don't know if having a huge arm in this offense, in an Adam Gase offense, is going to mean anything.
No!
Not at all.
The only way that pick makes sense is if you already have a legit veteran backup already on there. You can afford to take Morgan as a project, but in the 4th round, that's a reach.
Huge reach. And again, Fromm would have had at least some big play capability to start if needed. And
bare minimum, take a guy who played at a tier 1 college and played in big games.
Yes. Absolutely. I hate projects. Whatsoever, and that's what Morgan is.
They took too many guys, in my estimation, the 3rd and 4th rounds that project right now is more developmental than potential second-line guys who are going to get snaps during a regular season. And that, to me, when you have that many 4th-round picks, all of them. I mean, I'm like, come on.
Yeah, and I like but I do like picking a punter in round six. I know it's a little bit of a reach, but you got to get what you don't want to get. You got to get.
No, I mean, I'm going to tell you, but like I said, that's why to me, Bryce Hall could be the diamond in the rough here, because the kid, you don't know if he recovers and you get the guy who had 22 pass breaks up in 2018. Then yeah, you got yourself a 6'1", 202-pound corner who can play on the outside. And you get a bit of a diamond in the rough. You could get translated into a steal, but again, it's tough to tell because couldn't do the combine because he was hurt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but we'll see what happens. Jets, I give them a B, by the way. I give them a straight B.
Okay.
I don't give them an incomplete like you, Jay. I give them a real grade.
No.
Doesn't give a pass fail.
I gave them a C. I gave them a C plus.
I know.
With
you did give a C plus.
To be a B. But that's a lot to me. A lot of guys have to show me more than what I saw coming in for me to bump that grade up to a B. Right now, I'm at a C plus.
All right. Let's talk about the team who had the best draft. Let's focus on that positive first and tell us who had the best draft in 2020. Mr. Shepard, let's start with you.
Well, to me, it starts and it ends with Joe Burrow. I mean, look, it was an automatic. It was an automatic pick. You can't blow this one. It's like Peyton Manning in '98. It's like LeBron James in 2003. And so by default, the Bengals did something right in the last 365 days. But it is amazing what this kid is going to do. And I look, everyone wants, and Rabbi, you were talking about you don't like projects. This guy is the antithesis of a project. You talk about 5,600 plus yards. You talk about 60 touchdowns, passing alone. We've never seen that in the history of Division I football. What this guy did in addition to that was he led his team to a 14-0 record, overwhelmingly dominated a Clemson team with what people perceived as the best quarterback going into the season, the same team that made Alabama look like they were in middle school. This LSU team was special. He makes Ed Orgeron all of a sudden look like Bear Bryant.
That's
and
right.
Again, right. And I'm gonna tell you what really impresses me about him. This is, beyond the talent. He's the most ready quarterback we know. That upside, schmupside, who cares? He's going to come in and he's going to be a Russell Wilson type. He's going to be able to win from day one. He's going to have the maturity. He's going to have the discipline. And he's going to have the natural leadership. And he's going to have even more leadership because of the acumen and the experience and the intelligence he's going to be accustomed to when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals. But I'm going to tell you the thing that stands out the most to me. And this is why he's going to be all-time great. Beyond the redshirt season at Ohio State, for 2 years, guys, 2 years, he was a backup to J.T. Barrett. I mean, the guy's been on 3 different teams in 2 years. I don't know who's the backup to J.T. Barrett. When I think of a backup to J.T. Barrett, I think of a guy that never gets drafted in the NFL. This guy gets drafted overall #1. He has seen adversity. He knows what it's like being the underdog. He knows what it's like being the bench player. And so now you take that attitude, you disperse that attitude into being a franchise #1 overall pick. And by default, that is why the Cincinnati Bengals had the best draft in 2020.
And before we get to you, Jay, I would say this about Joe Burrow now that Andy Dalton was released today by the Bengals. I think they want him to start from day one. I think he's going to have a monster group of wide receivers. Ross, Higgins, and Green? Are you kidding me? This team is not going to Boyd. That's Eifert and Boyd, and then Eifert has to be in there. But that you have for a 2-week team last year. My God, the weapons. Jay, who do you got?
Yeah, and just to back on a little bit. I mean, the thing is, you're reading about Burrow is that he'd been studying the Bengals playbook even before he was officially drafted.
Right.
So that he can actually come in and basically jump in from day one. And one of the things, guys, that we forget is that their #1 pick from last year, Jonah Williams, missed most of the year with an injury. And they get him back, which will only prove their protection of their franchise quarterback. So they're going to be interesting to watch. I'm not looking forward to playing them twice a year in the AFC North. The guys, and speaking of the division that my Steelers inhabit, as much as it makes me as a fan throw up in my mouth a little bit, in my estimation, the team that had the best draft is the team that is right now the king of the hill, the king in the north, to borrow from Game of Thrones, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. These guys, I think Patrick Queen as their top pick was huge. The guy's going to start inside linebacker for them straight off the bat. Getting J.K. Dobbins at running back at 55 in the second, as their second round pick, that right there, they continue to, they're a run-first team and they're a run-heavy team, and they're going to continue to find guys who will fit the mold that enables them to keep doing that. And there are a lot of Steeler fans who are pissed at them for not taking Dobbins at 48 when he was available. Duvernay's interesting, the wide receiver out of Texas. They took Dobbins' teammate Malik Harrison as a linebacker, and they think to plug him and Queen in to the inside backer spots, and they think they're set for the next few years. The sleeper pick for me is James Proche out of SMU, the wide receiver. The kid's got big-time ball skills, but he doesn't have the ideal size and speed, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits. But the Ravens didn't really do much in terms of, trading up is not something that they do a lot of, and they pretty much stayed put, and players fell into their hands where they needed them. So it's interesting that they, trading up in the 6th round to get Proche means they saw something in this kid. So it'll be interesting to see what he gets and what he gives them. But they drafted for, not necessarily for need, but they drafted to fill position slots of who they are and who they want to continue to be. In this current iteration and even the next 2 or 3 iterations, the core of their team is youngsters. And these are rapidly guys who are about to start getting into their prime as youngsters. So their core and the guys they added to that existing core are going to be around a long time. And unless something drastic happens, I don't see how anybody knocks them off, unless the Bengals rapidly improve in all the other ways they need to develop to do that. Right now, Ravens are the king in the north, and their draft hasn't changed my thinking of that. To me, they get an A.
Geez, if you would think if Lamar Jackson was only on the cover of Madden in 2020, maybe that.
The James.
Although Patrick Mahomes just won a championship after being on the cover of Madden. Okay.
True.
So we're gonna do a sandwich here. Jay has the meat of the sandwich with one of the best teams in the NFL in Baltimore. Shepard picked one of the worst teams last year in the Bengals, and I'm actually going to pick one of the worst teams in the NFL last year, the team that had the number 3 overall pick, the Lions, in what is a draft that had a lot of teams playing it safe, whether it be because of the conditions, because of not seeing a lot of people beforehand, or not having any pro days, because God forbid we need pro days to tell us how good a person is when we've seen
the film
all the time. Look at the film. The Lions played it safe. They were rumored by a lot of people to pick Derek Brown out of Auburn, which would have been a huge reach at number 3. They didn't do that. They went with the right pick at Jeff Okudah, cornerback out of Ohio State. And then what did they do? They picked DeAndre Swift, who was readily available on there and what many people consider the best running back in the draft, on a silver platter at number 35. Hey, guess what? Now you have one of the best rushing attacks in almost all of football with Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift. Then they picked Julian Aquara. I'm not sure if I'm getting that name right, but he is a good edge rusher, and his brother is on the team. You got Jonah Jackson guard, Logan Sternberg guard. Safe picks, but you know what? 5 out of their first 6 picks are from big-name colleges. You got Notre Dame people, you got Ohio State, you got Georgia, you got Wisconsin. I think staying the course this year for the Lions was the right choice. I don't think anyone had an amazing draft this year, but let's once and for all give a round of applause to the Detroit Lions for not fucking up. And that's very good when that organization doesn't fuck up.
And Rabbi, you hit the hammer, you hit the nail right on the head there. It's not that there were organizations who are going to get decent grades if for no other reason then they didn't screw it up. It's not like they had a ridiculously successful draft. They just didn't screw it up. And for a lot of these teams, that's considered significant progress.
Shepard, you want to say something here?
Well, no, I'm still going back to the King of the North nonsense. How can you be a king? Jay, you know better than this. I mean, how can you be a king of anything if you lose to a Ryan Tannehill team at home when you have everything working in your favor, and they're all of a sudden the king of the North? I'd be very curious and amazed to see what you would call them if they won a playoff.
That's why I confined it to the small box that is the AFC North. I'm not saying they're the king of the AFC. I'm simply saying they're the king of the AFC North.
But how can you be a king and you bow out in the playoffs the way that you can't be a king of anything? They can be a solid team in the AFC North. I get that. But they're not the king of anything if you lose to a Ryan Tannehill team. I'm sorry.
Once you get into the playoffs, my man, it is a whole different can of whoop ass. And any given Sunday, because it's a one and done, anything can happen. And if you get the wrong team that is not a great matchup for you on a good day, that's what's going to happen.
Are you Marty Schottenheimer's secret son? Is that why you're saying this?
let's be fair here. They didn't lose to Ryan Tannehill. They lost to Derrick Henry. Because Derrick Henry was pretty much the quarterback of that team in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Chiefs made Henry look, pretty average, and I'm being generous. It's not like Henry's his all-time great running back. I understand he had 2 good games. I understand he had a good season.
He won the rushing title.
What's up?
He won the rushing title.
All
right, hey Rabbi, let me ask you a question. Who won the rushing title 3 seasons ago? That's my point. I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot, but that's my point. Who cares? No one remembers the rushing title. We remember
like I said, Shep, certain teams, there are certain teams in this league that are not good matchups for certain other teams in the league. And if you get that type of situation and the team that you're not a great matchup against, or is not a good matchup for you, plays their best game of the season.
Jay, they're 9-7. Don't tell me about being a better matchup. They're 9-7.
No. Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with record. You could have a team that's 4-11, but the way their personnel is and the way they play their scheme could be a bad matchup for a team that is 11-5. It's a question of is that on that particular day, are those 2 teams going head to head? Is that a good matchup for one team or another? And that's what you got. The Ravens were put in a position against a team that's a bad matchup for them, and they got a little burned.
Okay, so
they still go into the preseason as the preseason top team in the AFC North.
Okay, so Jim Kelly gets a pass because every team he played in the Super Bowl was the bad matchup.
Hey, the Giants were twice a bad matchup for the Patriots.
Okay, we're getting a little off the rails here. And when Jay mentions gives the Ravens props, that means a little something, especially coming from a Steelers fan. But I digress. Let's focus on the damn negative and let's just start some hate. Shep, there are 2 obvious examples of who had the worst draft in this league, and you're give us the most obvious one right now.
Right. Well, I'm going to say Joe Burrow. Oh, sorry, that was the last one.
The most obvious one, yes.
Right. Look, it's glaringly right. It's glaringly obvious. When you have a guy who goes 13-3, brings you to the NFC title. This is after a season just before that where they went 6-9-1. This is a guy that threw for over 4,000 yards. Out of that 4,000-yard club, the only member to throw 4 interceptions. Obviously, we know that's 1 interception for every 4 games. That's remarkable. And this guy is still at the zenith, the peak of his career. He's 7 years younger than Brady. And remember, Brady just a year and a half ago was the NFL's MVP. To me, Aaron Rodgers has been your rock for the last 10, 15 years. And you pick a quarterback, a.k.a. a guy drafted high enough that is going to be the heir apparent, and you piss off the best player. Maybe, listen, and I wanted to pose this to you guys just very quickly. Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Rodgers, actually, because of the fact that I think Rodgers is a more accurate passer, and Favre had weapons in his career, and Rodgers has really, once Jordy Nelson has left, and I know Nelson blossomed into a star, Rodgers has had literally nobody to throw to. The fact that, and Shep is right, the fact that they are drafting the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers now in this situation that they want to be an Aaron Rodgers 2.0? Bullshit. This is Aaron Rodgers needed weapons, and he got nothing.
Yeah, right. And honestly, you talk about those three legendary Packer quarterbacks. To me, Rodgers is the pick because to me, he combines the best aspects of both of the two legends that we put in that same conversation. He's got Bart Starr's ability up here in terms of thinking the game, decision-making, knowing where to go with the ball, being able to recognize what's happening on the field around him. And he's developed the type of risk-taking, gunslinging skill set that Favre brought. So to me, he's the best of the three of them in terms because he combines the both of them. And this is a guy who has freely said, and he's not injury prone. He's still at the top of his game. He said, I want to play till I'm at least 40. You're talking about, you're putting Love in the same situation that the Patriots put Garoppolo in when they drafted him, knowing full well you're drafting the heir apparent. How are you going to say that when Brady's nowhere even close to saying, I'm not ready to give it up yet? To me, it was a reach, and it was a wasted pick at the top of the draft. And I agree with you, Steph. You needed to give Rodgers weapons because he hasn't had jack since Jordy Nelson left and lost some of the other guys. And you gave him you didn't make lemonade. You just flat out just gave him lemons.
And again, but it's also you got to know your audience. You got to know your team. You got to know each player. You got to know them as a person. With Tom Brady, here's the difference. Brady knew that he does not run the ship in New England. There's one guy and one guy only, and that is Bill Belichick. And Tom Brady is going to control what he can control. Aaron Rodgers, by all accounts, is a diva. He's a guy that gets what he wants. He gets what he wants. If Aaron Rodgers signs off on Mike McCarthy is still the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Mike McCarthy made it to 3 NFC championship games, should have been 2 Super Bowls if not for the miraculous play of the Seahawks. And let's be honest, the botched onside receiving that the Packers did on that particular play. Look, to me, and you guys said it, you have a piece that is one of the – forget Starr and Favre. We're talking about one of the 3 or 4 most talented quarterbacks to ever live. And by my knowledge, in my eyes, he has not dropped off at all. But the real thing here, Jay and Rabbi, is this is not a guy that plays better when he's fueled. This is not a guy who plays better when people are doubting him. This is a guy that is so sensitive. He's Sully. You did this to the wrong quarterback, and you got what you deserved, and watch it backfire, and Rodgers is going to pull a Manning very soon.
Wait a minute.
By Manning, I mean Peyton.
You mean the guy who said RELAX is a high-strung quarterback? Come on!
Yeah, he's a diva.
Come on!
He's a diva.
Yes.
Guys, how many former teammates have to come out and say, Rodgers is not the best leader in the locker room before we know this guy doesn't really have the intangibles. He's got the talent.
All I will say is this. If your intent is you see, maybe not this coming year, but maybe the year after or whatever, there's going to come a point where you're going to be ready to move on from Rodgers before maybe he's ready to move on. You still pick the wrong quarterback to be his potential replacement. That is my bigger issue. If you take Rodgers himself and whatever, the fact that he's, the whole they disrespected Aaron Rodgers, they didn't get him any weapons. Here's the other thing. You didn't get him weapons. You still have a guy that you're going to have at least 1 more year, maybe 2, while you attempt to develop this kid. You still need to give Rodgers weapons. You still need to give him guys to get the ball to. And here's the thing. Rodgers is less of a diva and less of a jerk when he's happy. When is he happy? When he feels he's got guys who can make plays when he actually throws the ball downfield.
Anyone's less of a jerk when they're happy, Jay.
Well, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Do you want jerk Rodgers or do you want happy Rodgers? Come on.
And
we want Mr. Rodgers. We don't want the Aaron Rodgers.
Guys, let
me say one more thing before we move on to your pick, Jay. Let's also forget that they also went and picked a running back in round 2 in A.J. Dillon, who I've never freaking heard of. And that's a great way to make your star running back, who was basically carrying all the production and touchdowns last year, and Aaron Jones happy. So Packers, really bad draft. Jay, you have another pick. Who you got?
I'm not going to say they had an absolutely awful draft, but they had a draft that has me going, only because for the life of me, I have never, in all the years we've been doing this show, Rabbi, and covering the NFL, I have never figured out just what makes John Gruden tick.
No one has.
So the Raiders kind of confound me sometimes. So am I going to say they belong in the conversation for worst draft? Maybe, but I definitely think they're up there more in the conversation of most confounding draft. I mean, you had Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb available at 12, but you took Henry Ruggs, who is smaller, and you're basically looking at a guy who most people say, are you gonna? Can he? They don't know if he can play outside. Can he? You know, is he? Is he a guy that you can only put in the slot? Yeah, he's got under 4.3 speed, and yeah, he can definitely run the routes, and he only dropped 3% of the passes. But the question is you got to wonder, like, can they really do more with him? Than just have him take the top off of defense. I mean, granted, look, the Raiders have always loved speed. Chucky loves speed. But I think they may have been better served with a quarterback like Carr getting a more polished receiver who you can move around and do more things with. So I don't know so much about that. I could be wrong. Look, I mean, is it possible that it's only because Ruggs didn't get as much of the spotlight as Jeudy, because Jeudy was on a lot of people's boards the best wide receiver in the country? I don't know.
He did. That's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people liked Ruggs, and I think Ruggs has the better talent out there, but he still is kind of an unproven project. Remember, Josh Jacobs, who also had a very good season for the Raiders, did nothing in Alabama because there was way too many weapons out there. But still, it was a reach at number 12. Go on, sir.
Right. And then you look at the other receiver they took, Bryan Edwards, who, a lot of people think has potential, but I mean, third round, 81. I don't know. It makes me wonder. There, and there are other things that, like, you look at this draft and you look at needs, and did they fill all of their needs? I don't know. I mean, a lot of it is up for debate. I just wonder if they, are these rookies? I don't know that these guys are all going to make the big impact. To me, like, at least with your first two picks, you should be looking to get guys who you say, if they're not going to become the number one at the position, they're guys who are immediately going to step in and be part of the rotation. You look at their draft, even with Damon Arnett, the cornerback out of Ohio State, you're not 100% sure that these guys are going to immediately be part of the rotation. Ruggs is going to get in there because Chucky loves speed. So it's just a question of these other guys just kind of make you shake your head and go, eh?
Things that make you go, eh, by Jay Kaplan. All right, so I had mentioned before there are two obvious picks who I think many people lauded having the worst draft. The Packers, especially with the Jordan Love pick. And goddamn it makes me smile to say that the other pick is the Philadelphia Eagles. So,
you and I are going to agree to disagree on this.
I know we disagree on this, but let me state my case. First of all, the Eagles had a very weird draft because in 2018 and 2019, they picked 10 players. This draft, they had 10 picks. So before we get to Jalen Hurts, and we're going to talk a lot about Jalen Hurts, the Raider pick at 21, which we were off the air last week before we got to this, is a reach. It's a huge reach.
Oh, yeah.
I think Jefferson from LSU, go Tigers, is a much better player that would fit more in Philadelphia's system. And then Minnesota took him, which is a good pick, but he's a slot receiver, as is Adam Thielen. That did not work out as well either. You have Brandon Ayuk, who had enough of a pedigree enough for San Francisco wanting to trade up for him at 25, even though they had no draft capital whatsoever. And then I think Mims and Baylor might have been an even better pick at 30. We went in almost at 50 on the second night. And you had T. Higgins. Oh, my goodness, who was from Clemson, who could have easily been a good player in this draft for them. I think Jalen Reagor out of TCU was a huge reach at 21. Okay, Jalen Hurts. Pick him in the second round. I understand what they're trying to do. Okay. You want a proven backup for Carson Wentz. You want to make sure if Wentz gets hurt, and breaking news, he's going to get hurt. I don't think this is real news to anybody, That's perfectly fine. You want him, that's great. You want him to be there. But now you're saying that but you also have Jake Fromm available at that spot. At that point, you had Jacob Eason, who is available in that spot, who can do that. You have Andy Dalton, who you can get in free agency, who gets hurt. You have somebody who started playoff games. And then I hear the fact that they want to make Jalen Hurts the next Taysom Hill. And we'll get to Taysom Hill in a second. The Taysom Hill package on steroids. That's perfectly fine. Do you think Carson Wentz is ready to do this? I don't know. I think you need wide receivers to throw to. And Jalen Hurts is not going to be a regular wide receiver for him. If he says he's going to be a regular wide receiver, that's perfectly great. But you need that. You need defensive players in the secondary. You don't pick a primary backup quarterback in round 2. Even Jalen Hurts says, I don't know what my role is going to be on the Philadelphia Eagles. You don't do that with your second round pick in today's NFL. It's a reach. I like Hurts as a quarterback. I think Hurts will start games as a quarterback. He might even start for Alabama this year. And don't get me started on the fact that both Hurts and Wentz both got injured, and their backups won championships. So, but you only go as far as your main quarterback, and if Wentz gets hurt, I don't know if Hurts is going to be the right guy. Jay, respond, because I know you don't.
Yes, and Dave, just to give you a little context, the Rabbi and I actually started this conversation even before our production meeting on Tuesday night, because I texted the Rabbi Monday morning as I was listening to Max Kellerman, a guy I knew as a kid way back in the day, make an utter fool of himself, trying to shred this pick. And here's my thing with this. I put this in the same perspective as the Giants taking Daniel Jones at 6, not because I think Hurts is a franchise quarterback. I'm just saying, Carson Wentz is injury prone. When this guy is healthy, is he a top 15 quarterback?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Top 10.
If there ever was, I don't go top 10 only because he's injury prone. If there was ever a
But
team,
you said if he was healthy.
So he was healthy.
Yeah.
if ever there was a team who is exhibit A as to why you need a competent backup quarterback, this is the team. Now, look, am I saying Jalen Hurts is the next Nick Foles? No. Do I think Jalen Hurts improved his stock when he went from Alabama to Oklahoma to play for Lincoln Riley? Yes, I think he showed the NFL that he can do a lot more than he did when he was in Alabama's offense. Do I think he needs to develop? Yes. Do I think the Taysom Hill, wildcat type packages is I don't know. But here's the thing. Jalen Hurts, to me, and this is the one thing that has stuck with me his entire collegiate career, and we have watched him, we have followed him. He has been in our personal spotlight on the show for his entire career because of the teams that he has played for. This is a guy who's not going to ruffle feathers. He is going to come in, even if he doesn't know what his exact role will be other than he's number 2 on the depth chart. He's going to come in. He's going to work. He's going to be a pro's pro. He is going to be a good guy to have in that quarterback room, and he will bust his ass so that if he's called upon, and with Wentz's history, you got to believe he will be able, I think there will come a point where it may not be year 1, but in year 2, I think he will be able to step in and win games for this team, not just manage the game for them to win, but he will be able to win games with his skill set. And if you firmly believe that this is the best guy for you to have as Carson Wentz's backup, then you take him where he is. Other people are going to say it's a reach, but I'm sorry. If I'm the Eagles and I know that I have got to get somebody who is competent to be behind Carson Wentz, who is not coming here using this as an opportunity to look for his next contract, then I have a problem with Jalen Hurts being that guy for all of the intangibles that he will bring.
That's perfectly fine, Jay. But again, I mean, if you think it's your guy, perfectly fine, but you don't. It's way too early for him. And again, if he's not going to be your backup, and his primary reason is to be Taysom Hill 2.0, although Taysom Hill 2.0 isn't really Taysom Hill 2.0, as we'll get to in a second, then you can get a guy like that later. And I don't think this was the right spot to get him at, because there's so many more holes on this team.
Granted,
that I think that finding that is not your guy. Is not
without a doubt. Did they need would the Philadelphia faithful have been more welcoming if that pick was one of the upper echelon level, wide receivers that in this draft? Yes, I get it. I do. But if they believe that they have enough guys in that room right now, and they can pick up the rest later. No, we're not in that draft room. We don't know just how highly Howie Roseman, and he has said, you know what, that is a position of value. They may be the only team in the NFL who places more value on the number 2 quarterback than anyone else. And if that is their philosophy, then that's the reason behind the pick, because that's the way how much they value that position on their roster. And if that's the case,
I completely understand why. I actually liked the pick when I first saw it, but looking back at hindsight, I'm not so sure. All right, let's move on. We had a lot of NFL offseason news last week, and we talked about someone coming in to Tampa Bay and Rob Gronkowski. So now let's talk about someone who's coming out of Tampa Bay in Mr. Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston signed a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. God forbid, I hope incentives are included in that, to back up Drew Brees in New Orleans. Or is he backing up Drew Brees in New Orleans? We'll see about that. It's an interesting move, Jay, but is it the right
one? Here's the thing with Jameis. We've been doing, comparisons with Winston and other contemporaries pretty much since he came on the scene in college. In college, it was, and we were coming into his draft year, it was him versus Marcus Mariota. And that I was very much firmly in Mariota's camp. To a certain extent, I still am. Jameis needs to be in a place where the pressure is not on him. And I think there was way too much pressure on him in Tampa Bay. And I think couple that with what I think is is overconfidence in his own skill set. And I think that, as much as anything, led to the turnover machine. This guy, if you think about it, he's like a hitter in Major League Baseball who, like, 90% of his at bats are one true outcome. He either homers, he strikes out, or he walks.
He's Adam Gunn.
There you go.
He's Adam Gunn.
In Winston's or Mark Reynolds, if you want. In Winston's case, 30 touchdowns, 30 turnovers, 30 interceptions. So you're either going to get all or you're going to get nothing. And that's not sustainable. And I understand why, when the Bucs had the chance to get something that's a little more, for lack of a better phrase, safe, they went with it. Does Jameis still have an NFL caliber skill set? Yes, but I think and maybe it just, he wasn't a good fit with Bruce Arians in that offense. Maybe they just did not get along, but for whatever reason, he now gets, and here's the thing with it, he has to recognize the opportunity he has to become Teddy Bridgewater 2.0. You get to learn from not only one of the best offensive minds in the game in Sean Payton, you get to learn how to be a quarterback in the NFL, both on the field, in the locker room, and in public, from one of the best to ever inhabit the position. Drew Brees is Mr. New Orleans, and that in every way that you can be described that way. And it's an offense I think that he can fit in well with. It's not all reliant on his arm, so he doesn't have to worry about that. If he gets rid of the bad habits, learns from the ground up and recognizes, okay, I'm probably not going to start this year unless Drew Brees gets hurt and Drew Brees just doesn't get hurt. But if I learn and I absorb and I take the lessons and recognize what this opportunity is, I may not be the future starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, but I may be a future starting quarterback somewhere else. And I can do what Teddy Bridgewater did, and I can transition this opportunity into my next one, which will be the opportunity I really want, which is to be a QB1 again in this league.
Dave?
No, I like the home run Adam Dunn, Mark Reynolds analogy. I think you guys are spot on, and even Granderson towards the end of his career.
That's true.
I think it's interesting because Bruce Arians is a quarterback coach. I know he's obviously been a head coach for a while, but he's really made his mark as a guy that got the most out of quarterbacks, a la Ben Roethlisberger, Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're Jameis, it's interesting that you make that move. And I know some people are saying, well, he didn't have a choice. I think if he were to go to Arians and say, look, I want to be a backup, because here's the thing.
Mark
Brady. Well, first of all, Jay, and also just very quickly, you said that he may not be the starting quarterback of the Saints. I think Brees is done after this year because there's so much chatter and so many whispers about what he's going to do next, specifically that he's going to be a very well-known, prominent analyst. I mean, I don't know many guys that are making that statement, that are making that proclamation 2-3 years out. I think this is it for him. So I think if you're Jameis, I think you're smarter than what people give him credit for. And, the other thing is you don't throw for over 5,000 yards if you're not superbly talented. And look, yes, he's turnover prone. I get that. And I know he's been in the league for 5 years. But it was his first year under Arians. He hasn't had stability in that franchise. He hasn't had consistency. He hasn't had pieces around him to show him the way. I think whether he were backing up for Brady or Brees, I think he would have been good. I think he's getting a little bit of a raw deal here, by the way. I think he deserves one more year to start. I think throwing over 5,000 yards should not shun you and should not put you to the bench.
Well, look, I hear what you're saying, Shep, and there's a part of me that kind of leans in a little bit on the possibility that I don't disagree one bit that Jameis Winston has the tools, he has the skills to be a legit NFL starting quarterback. I think on top of everything else that he and Arians just did not click.
Yeah.
Arians, look, is this guy, he's a quarterback whisperer. We know that. We saw what he did for Carson Palmer when we thought Palmer was near the end. We saw what he did in Pittsburgh with Roethlisberger, as you noted. The guy develops quarterbacks. But, just because you have that on your resume doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. And if for whatever reason, Jameis would, in that quarterback room, in those game planning sessions, those film sessions, if for whatever reason, all the talent in the world and all the skills in the world and all the rocket arm in the world, but for whatever reason, if up here, Jameis was not picking up what Arians was putting down, it doesn't matter how good of a quarterback whisperer Arians is. If it's not a good fit, then it's eventually a divorce was inevitable. And honestly, look, if Brady didn't make the move, is it possible that Jameis would be the QB1 coming into this season? Yeah, because the Buccaneers wouldn't have had many other options. So, but the thing is, I think this is a chance for Jameis to get a reset, to see that, the situation he was in is not the only situation. It's not the only way that coaches interact and whisper and whisper to quarterbacks to make them better. You can look at it and say, okay, look at what happened. I mean, I hate to keep bringing up Bridgewater, but if Teddy Bridgewater went from a high draft pick to essentially being on the fringe, recovering from an injury, to being okay for as a backup, to essentially going 5-0 last year as a starter for the Saints when Brees was hurt, and that audition and what personal guys around the league saw when he's got that second chance to audition for them, you got to believe that maybe the way Sean Payton develops quarterbacks is better for Winston than the way Bruce Arians develops quarterbacks. It's not about how good the coach is and how good the skill set of the quarterback. They have to mesh up here and right here. And if they don't, it doesn't matter what each of them brings to the table. The marriage just isn't going to work. And there's a part of me that believes that there was some truth to that going on down in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Let's clean up a few things over here. Number one, Jameis Winston, 35 turnovers last year. 5 turnovers to go on with the 30 interceptions. Number two, Brees is actually already signed with NBC. Once he retires, he will be the heir apparent to go to Football Night in America and will eventually take over Collinsworth's job.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rabbi. I didn't know that was Collinsworth is one of the best. He's still a relatively young guy.
Eventually, he's going to take over that job because.
So what's Collinsworth going to? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
But here's the thing, Rabbi. I believe Brees' contract is for another 2 years.
It's for 1 year. It's for 1 year, and there have already been. Peyton already almost said it, kind of almost let it slip. This is his last year. Yeah, Collinsworth is still going to be the main guy for many years, but NBC wanted him in the pipeline to eventually take over because Brees will only be in his early 40s and Collinsworth is going to be in his late 50s. And if Al Michaels retires, who is in his late 70s, eventually there's a possibility that Collinsworth might go with after that.
Yeah. And because there's no Hubie Browns of the world that go into their 80s. Great move by
not Brees. A lot of people are Hubie Brown. And number three, a quote that I actually liked, actually said on Charlie Ward, yes, that Charlie Ward's Instagram Live Instagram Live page, that Jameis Winston is going to have a Harvard education in quarterback school. I love that line, and I love how Jameis understands the opportunity he's in, even though he is going to be paid jack shit this year as a backup quarterback. Speaking of that backup quarterback, Jameis is not the backup. Taysom Hill is going to get every chance to possibly be the backup. I think the Saints, who just extended Hill to 2021, Saints fans, and I even think the Saints organization really wants Taysom Hill to eventually get that job. I have never seen a more beloved player for the Saints who has literally he's done a lot of cool things, but here's the fun fact. Jameis Winston has thrown more passes to the New Orleans Saints in his career in terms of interceptions, 10, than Taysom has, 7. So I understand how Winston is going to have a brand new playbook in NOLA, but you need to know what you have with Taysom Hill as a backup, because eventually if you're going to want him to take the starting job, why do you bring in Jameis? And I think it's a good move for Jameis. However, Jameis is going from a fan base who has seen Jameis play twice a year in that backup position. So not only is Jameis, who is one of the most polarizing quarterbacks I think we've ever seen in terms of how he gets treated in the media because of his INTs, but now you have a fan base who's seen him twice every single year. He also said, by the way, his little famous E to W speech, that was in New Orleans. So you don't want to put the fear of God in a fan base if Drew Brees gets hurt, which he might get hurt because he got hurt last year. I love this move for the Saints in terms of for Jameis, because you could do a lot worse than a 30-touchdown throwing, former Heisman winning, #1 former overall draft pick who started all but 10 games in his career as the Bucs starter. And if you want to measure backup, that's fine. If you want to measure backup, that's crazy.
Well, hey, look, here's the thing, Rabbi. You got to remember, I don't think Jameis coming in is going to change the way that the Saints utilize Taysom Hill. I don't think that.
No, it's not going to change the way he's going to use Taysom Hill, but eventually you're going to need an heir apparent. And
right. And honestly,
he is.
And let me tell you this, and I don't think that's a question they probably don't think they need to worry about that question this year. And if part of the bringing in of Jameis is that we want both of these guys in the system, because if Drew Brees is definitely leaving after this year, then we come into the next season with 2 guys who have a full year and 2 years in our system We have guys who already know our system to be the 1 and the 2, and they'll fight it out to be the 1 and the 2 the year after Breeze is gone. So does it change Taysom's role? I don't think so in the immediate. It just means that when Breeze is gone, he's not automatically anointed Breeze's successor. Winston's not automatically anointed Breeze's successor, but it gives the Saints 2 guys who that's the start of that next generation in terms of being in that quarterback room.
Well, let's move on to our last topic and the last dance. Yeah, so the 10-part documentary was moved up by ESPN for what was going to be a June debut to pretty much right smack dab in the middle of April and May to respond to the nothingness we've had in the world of sports. Parts 1 through 4 have aired over the past 2 weekends, and new episodes will run up until May 17th. And then, what the hell do I do with my Sunday nights? Oh, billions. Never mind. Okay, Dave, what's your biggest takeaway from parts 1 through 4?
I mean, there's so much depth and intricacies to that Bulls team. I mean, it's a fair question, but to answer it honestly, there's so many takeaways. There's 4 things that really stand out. One is how great Michael Jordan was and how that matched with humility. That's rare in today's game where an athlete has the kind of hype he does, but then understands, and I don't mean they speak it, he lived it, that he's going to have to earn everything. That was evident. Scottie Pippen was so I don't like how Scottie reacted to everything, but to be not even one of the top 100 paid players in the NBA when you're the 3rd or 4th best player in the NBA, that's horrible. That's horrible. I understand professional athletes sign these contracts, but if professional sports teams can cut these guys anytime they want, players have a right to renegotiate their contract. The fact that Reinsdorf couldn't step up was, to me, absolute bad leadership, in my opinion. Rodman, great character. Phil Jackson, great coach, underrated. People say you roll out a ball and you can win championships with Michael and Scottie, and then later on with Shaq and Kobe. Last time I checked, if you look at Shaq, Jordan, so Shaq played, I want to say 11 years without Phil. Kobe played, I believe it was 6 years without Phil, 17 Jordan, 6. So basically it's about 30 years if you look at all those 4 guys without Phil Jackson. Between the 4 of them, they've won 1 title. So let's just stop the notion that Phil Jackson only wins with talent. No, people win because they have Phil Jackson. 2. The last point is this. If you're Jerry Reinsdorf, I don't understand for the life of me how you don't say, I have a 1 in a million prize here. I not only have Michael Jordan, who's the greatest player maybe in the history of sports, but I also have Scottie Pippen, a guy who might be the biggest complimentary piece in the history of sports, and you let Jerry Krause dictate what's going to be the final season for your head coach. It's unbelievable. I think so much. And then Jerry Reinsdorf tries to come off as his hero because he said, well, let's run it back 1 more year. You win a championship and you have those pieces, you deserve an opportunity to run it back every single year until you are knocked off the throne. That's what stood out to me. I love it so far, guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Shep, even before, I came late to the party. So I missed 1 and 2 when they aired live. And I kind of got my first taste of those 2 episodes by reading the recaps in The Athletic and watching your show on the Good Shepherd, on your Good Shepherd YouTube channel.
Oh, thank you, Jay.
Okay. No, I mean, it was good stuff, Jeff. I mean, I told you that, over social media. And when I got a chance the following Sunday to watch all 4 episodes in a row to really kind of get the full deep dive, as someone who, who lived that whole stretch of the Jordan era from, coming in the 63 against Bird when he was a wet behind the ears kid, to the Pistons years, and that, that Montagues and Capulets freaking level of hatred rivalry, if I can, borrow from the Bard here, to the first set of 3, and then the second set of 3 after he returned. The things that I saw firsthand that were that we saw again. I'm like, oh yeah. But it's like, it's the look behind the curtain, at how the sausage was or was not made that kind of really made this stand out for me. And you talk about, and to me, the big thing, and it reminded, and I said this to Rabbi right off the bat, the first thing that jumped into my head as I started watching all 4 episodes in a row last Sunday was, oh my God, Jerry, I forgot just how much of an asshat Jerry Krause was and how much of his ego, and it was all about his ego, that destroyed that team. And the fact that Reinsdorf just sat up there and stuck to his whole thing with Scottie Pippen, I don't think you should sign this. I don't think you should sign this. But if you do, I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from you. And I'm like, and you're right. I agree with you on the point, Shep, that you have that collection of talent with that coach, and you've already won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
You're going for your second three-peat. You run that back until these guys can't run anymore. I mean,
right.
And Reinsdorf to just sit up there and not intervene when Krause is going to him, nope, I can rebuild this team. All these guys are replaceable. I can do this all over again with anybody else. Are you fracking kidding me? You have the greatest player in the history of the game still in his prime. Or maybe not, maybe one season past it. But
he was pretty close, yeah.
Still Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And you surrounded him. I mean, there's a reason Scottie Pippen made the Dream Team in 92. There's a reason he made the top 50 when that was rolled out by the NBA. There has never been a better Robin to a Batman in NBA history, and that's taken into account the Celtics teams of Bill Russell and the Lakers teams that had Chamberlain and West. In terms of all-around guys who could do it on both ends of the floor at a Tier 1 level. And you allow this guy with this run wild ego and Napoleon complex to dictate whether this team continues to attempt to set championship records. Because, Shep, you and I both know if Reinsdorf had stepped out and done a Bob Kraft and said, shut up, we're going to let these guys run it however long we want because we have a chance to challenge the freaking Celtics for most team championships, you do it. Really, Pippen being the 122nd highest paid player in the NBA, Reinsdorf not being intractable on that, not renegotiating thing. I'm sorry. You had no clue. I don't care what you thought you saw on his game tape. You had no clue the Scottie Pippen you drafted is going to be the Scottie Pippen that you eventually wound up with. And the minute you found out that he was who you wound up with, I'm sorry, Reinsdorf, you break that freaking rule and you pay that man. And then you tell Krause, you know what? You can rebuild this when I tell you can, and it's after these guys either can't or they don't want to do it anymore, and that includes Phil. So that kind of irked the living hell out of me, and it reminded me of a lot of things that I lived, stories that I remember really being enraged about at that time. But you mentioned Rodman, and you see in the 3rd and 4th episodes the Rodman as he was in the pit for the Pistons, and who he morphs into in his time with the Bulls. And I think that guy is the real Dennis Rodman, because as Rodman said, he finally got a chance to be who he wanted to be. And I don't think anyone else could have coached him other than Phil Jackson. And I don't think any other stars could have accepted him and understood that other than Pippen and Jordan, that there's a difference between Rodman the player, the guy inside the white lines and the hardwood, and the human being who, from just an off the court, the dude's whack. He's crazy. He's a unique human being. But the fact that the minute Rodman stepped onto that floor or stepped into that locker room, you knew what you were going to get from him, and he accepted his role. He knew he needed to be the dirty guy, do all the dirty work, do the rebounds. And what surprised me, and I didn't know this about him, is just how much time and effort he put into becoming the best rebounder of his generation. looking at angles of how shots come off from certain sides of the floor, looking at tape to see how guys' shots and where their stuff came. And that was the biggest thing. And to see the relationship behind the scenes with Phil and with Rodman, that was really kind of cool to see, because we didn't see that. We didn't get enough of that to kind of get that type of understanding when it was actually happening in real time. And you know what? Whether you're a casual fan who vaguely remembered that era, or you're like the three of us who were all in with it, this is a really well put together documentary, and I am psyched for the next 6 episodes.
You guys, I'm going to take a 48-minute timeout. I promise I'll be back in 48 minutes. I'll see you then. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
As long as it ain't 96.
and also just never, ever. Who even, no one thought in the world when Robin took a 48-hour break to go to Vegas that he would come back in time. Just a game or two, but, that's Rodman being Rodman. Quick question, guys. In the 12 years after Jordan retired, can you guess how many playoff series the Bulls won?
Well, the answer is obvious. It's 0.
It's 1.
Oh, 1? Okay.
It is 1. They did have 1, I think, way back when. But, yeah, good job, Jerry Krause, with your rebuilding and stuff like that. Okay. A few points that I have to kind of lock everything up. First of all, the way that this Bulls dynasty ended, it's kind of the antithesis of what happened with the Patriots dynasty, because people were kind of sick playing for Belichick. And all of a sudden the Bulls say, nah, let's just blow it up ourselves. That makes the most sense, because that's how you stop winning. Okay, that's really great. Number 2, I love Pippen. I actually think it was by far, I know there was no rule that really said, I know Reinsdorf, I know when we can all Monday morning quarterback and say, hey, tear up that contract and pay the man. You paid Jordan a shitload of money in his final years, but you never signed a 7-year, $18 million deal, even at that era. But I fully supported Pippen holding out that time during that time, because beginning of the season, kind of like what NFL players would do in training camp, holding out. He was there when it counted most, and then that kind of put Robin back to a unfortunate third wheel. Also, what should have been mentioned, the Tex Winter Doug Collins feud. Oh my God, how do you kick off a coach and just say, nah, I want to buy the sidelines? Oh my God, I didn't realize how much of an egomaniac Doug Collins was back in the day.
Well, you got to remember, Rabbi, we only saw that side of Collins, and you didn't see it in any of his other coaching stuff.
No.
And again, the catalyst for that and the instigator for that is, again, Jerry Krause. It's him saying, I want you to do it this way. I'm running this team. You do what I tell you to do. I'm sorry. Really? If you wanted to kind of put a guy, and look, he doesn't deserve the full credit for Jordan becoming who he became, but I got to tell you, the guy kind of started him down that road. And the fact, why are you doing anything that would mess up the chemistry that Jordan and Collins had been building? And you saw where that was going. And look, we all know, Phil turned out to be Phil, but you didn't know that going in. Nope. Collins had already been putting these guys, moving them up in terms of, incremental success. You saw where it was going. But again, to me, that is just another example of because I'm in this organization. It's not the coach. It's not Jordan. I run this thing. No, you don't.
No, he doesn't. And it kind of set the table that the Bulls almost won despite Krause. And also, oh my God, the Bulls-Pistons rivalry that started with Collins' first year. By the way, does anybody remember the team in between the Cavs and the Pistons who the Bulls defeated in the second round of the playoffs?
Yeah, it's the Houston Rockets. No,
it's the Knicks.
Knicks, yeah, because the Rockets were in the Western.
They kind of just shied that away, which is perfectly fine because we're going to get more of that. But I love the Bulls-Pistons rivalry, and to be fair, I know Isaiah Thomas comes out and says, well, we walked off the court because that's exactly what the Celtics did to us in 1988. Oh, I mean, it was 1986, I think. I don't remember offhand.
86 the Celtics won it. 87 the Celtics went to the finals. It would have been 88.
Yeah, it was 88. Bullshit. Okay. How dare you have no respect for a team toppling you down? Jordan rules, by the way. The fact that Brenda Malone just came out and said, these are the Jordan rules, and this is what happened. Brilliant. Brilliant. I can't believe that we actually got to hear exactly how the Pistons said, and if those two don't work, just hit him in the lane and see what happens. Perfect strategy. And then Jordan got all of the calls for the rest of his career. But all of the stuff that we saw this week about Isaiah possibly being off of the Dream Team because of MJ, and that seemingly has gotten a little debunked. And Isaiah Thomas lying, which I've never seen before in my entire life. That never happens. And then Bill Laimbeer coming out and saying, you know what? They deserved exactly what they got, and we should have walked off the court. You know what? Laimbeer's an asshole, and I can say that, but I respect him for being real and not being like saying what Isaiah said in the documentary. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have done that. No, Isaiah, you wanted to do that, and you still want to do that to this day. MJ had the right to call you exactly what he called you immediately afterwards.
And you got to think, it's like MJ called it before he even was handed the call. He says, I don't care what you show me. He did what he did on purpose with malice of forethought. And if he says anything different, it means that he has tempered that by what has happened subsequent to it, and he's had a chance to think about it. Look, you and I both know, and Shep, you know this as well, the NBA of that era was a vastly different NBA. Guys stayed with teams. There wasn't this player movement and playing with your buddies and getting together to try and get all of y'all on the same team together. Star players were identifiable with that franchise. So rivalries were rivalries, and these guys, when they say we don't like each other much, they weren't kidding. They really didn't. But to tell you the truth, to me, it's disrespect for I don't care if the Celtics did that to you. When you kept knocking the Bulls off previously, Jordan, even if he hated every single one of you, he went over and he shook your hand after the series was said and done. Not out of respect for you, Isaiah, or you, Bill Laimbeer, out of respect for the game. And that's the thing that irked me about the Pistons. That diss, that you are showing that you have a lack of class and lack of respect for the game. But I got to tell you, I couldn't wait to see the behind-the-curtain stuff related to the Pistons-Bulls rivalry, because what you saw on the court, you knew it was real. The hatred was real. But to see the other parts of that, the other sides of that, that was awesome.
Yeah, guys, it's the only thing we have to look forward to in the near future. But nice discussion, guys. This has been a great show, and we've almost gone 90 minutes for such few topics. I relate that to all of us having a lot of strong opinions. But we have come to another session in the end of the Temple of Zoom. For Jay Kaplan on top, Dave Shepard on bottom. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz. Remember, subscribe to the Good Shepherd on Facebook. You've done 8 of these, Dave.
Keep it up, Shep.
Thanks, guys.
We've talked about he has some really good opinions, and you can win any sports argument you want to them. Subscribe on YouTube today. And also, subscribe to this show. Go to youtube.com/onthesportslines, and you can see this show again tomorrow. Facebook.com/onthesportslines for anybody who's watched us tonight or wants to see us again in a few moments when I click close for live streaming. And whatever we have live events to talk about, you can always catch us at On the
Sports Lines on Twitter.
Yes, on Twitter. And check it out. A week from today, we will live stream again as we will draft the face of the next decade of New York sports. Our New York series has come back, unless sports comes back and we have stuff to talk about, and then we might talk about that. Seriously, everybody, good night, everyone.
Shep, good to see you, buddy.
Likewise. Rabbi Jay, thanks for having me, gentlemen.